Everybody, thank you for being here. The school committee may seek to convene into open session and recess to executive session for discussion and or action regarding these items of business exempt from the open meeting under Rhode Island General Law 4246-4 in a discussion action NEASK negotiations, Rhode Island General Law 4246-5A2, a discussion and action pending litigation. Nicole Solis versus South Kingston School District under Rhode Island General Law 4246-5A2, a discussion and superintendent search with NESDEC update personal 4246-5A1. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion passed. That's right, okay. Excuse me. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. So we have Mr. Bradley Sher,
Here.
Mr. James Festivo,
Here.
Ms. Calvetta,
Here.
Miss Melissa Boyd, Miss Kate Nancy.
Here.
Miss Michelle Busso. Here. And myself, Paula Whitford, here. Please join us in the pledge of allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could we have a motion to seal the minutes in executive session?
I'll make a motion to seal the minutes of executive session.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. There was a vote taken in the executive session. However, that vote will be disclosed at the appropriate time. Next is community comments.
we'll fight over who gets, who gets 15 more steps. Mr. Beasley?
$150 million bond and its funding. It's almost hard, it's almost hard to believe where we are now with that. So I know tonight you're going to have a presentation about how your out of district tuitions affect your per pupil cost. When you look at your budget and where in your budget savings could be realized as in the future, it really boils down to three categories: compensation, transportation, and out of district tuition. The out of district tuition really won't change significantly unless and until the bond passes and we build a new high school. The students who go to 120 some students who go to Kingston Hill Academy and the Compass School, those students aren't going to come back here. We're the only, as in that chart that Mr. Kilpatrick is going to show you, we're the only town in Rhode Island that has 2 charter schools in within its borders. So that's just the way it is. If the bond passes and we build that new high school and it's as nice as we hope it's going to be, maybe over the 2 or 3 or 4 years, it's not going to happen instantaneously. You're not going to have 50 students come back on year 1. I don't think. But over 3 or 4 years, I would think that the students that were leaving here for other districts will maybe decide to stay home. Their parents will have them stay here. One of the things that also is also happening in this town has to do with sports. This year in South Kingstown schools, in the high school, there are five sports which did not have a JV team. Girls baseball, girls soccer, boys volleyball, boys I can't remember the other ones, but here's the problem. Sports are very important to this community. We have all manner of sports teams, from t-ball to now lacrosse has taken over the town. This town has always loved their sports. So we have all these kids in sports going up through the grades, and then it comes to a point where they've got to make a decision where they're going to go to high school. Problem is, a varsity team has very few slots in it. A varsity basketball team has like 15. Baseball team, it might have 25. But if you have incoming freshmen who are not physically or skill-wise ready to play on a varsity team, which very few of them are, there's no place for them to play now if you don't have a JV team. I don't know how you fix that. But it's one of the reasons some of our students are not coming here. I forgot something at home, but the chart that I've sent you before, it shows our step distribution of our teachers, or that are in NEASK, teachers or counselors and that stuff. Okay, so you have this giant block up top, step 10, and then you have these other 9 steps below them. 2 of those 9 steps have 1 person in it this year. 2 others have 2 people. The most that any of those other steps have, those other 9 steps, is 6. 2 have 6, 2 have 1, 2 have 2. So we're as top heavy as you can get. But when I asked for the birth years of all of our teachers, and when I analyzed the birth years, what I discovered is 30%. So there's 260 people altogether. 30% of those teachers are age 55 or older today. Now I'm assuming that when those people started their teaching careers way back when, 25, 30 years ago, they were expecting to be retired at age 55, because that's what the rule was. It wasn't changed until it was changed earlier by Gina Raimondo, when she was the treasurer. And so now those people are here, and they're going to be here until they can retire. So what can you do? So you have people that thought they'd be retiring, but they're still here. Now, what can we do to help those people? The biggest thing you could do to help them is to get start bringing in Conamigo into our district. Now, this was on the NEA national website. It says register for AI in education webinars. Titles like an introduction to AI in education, the big picture, AI in the classroom, strategies and activities to enrich student learning, AI in teaching, exploring the impact of AI technologies in planning, instruction, and assessment. AI for good, exploring ethics, equity, and digital citizenship. Okay, these are webinars that the union that represents our teachers created. Here's just one. I'm going to read the last paragraph in this. The title of this is A Review of Conmigo, the amazing AI super tutor for students and teachers. Conmigo, the amazing AI super tutor, is revolutionizing education by offering personalized support to students, empowering educators, and bridging the gap between AI and human interaction. As education technology continues to evolve, Conmigo stands as a testament to the potential of AI and making education more accessible. So I'm asking you again tonight, please, at the very least, get it onto an agenda very soon so that you can make a decision whether you want to bring it into this school district this fall. If you would bring it into your 5th grade and your 6th this year on a trial basis, 1 year, it costs $35 per student. So for the number of students we have, I think was 390 in those 2 grades this year. It's like $12,000. Yes, you're going to have instruction for the educators. They're going to be using it. So that's part of professional development. If it works, then you could expand it the next year. It seems to me what's the harm? What's the holdup? If it requires new language in the teacher's contract, I don't know if it's still being, I don't know if the teacher's contract signed or whatever, wherever it is. But if it hasn't been signed, and if you need language in the contract so that integrating AI into the district doesn't have any stumbling blocks because of what's written in the contract today, then you would need to address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley.
This time I would close to community comments and move on to the next item on the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. Next item on the agenda is our superintendent's report, and I pass that on to Mr. Littlefield.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the committee. First of all, I would like to direct your attention to the personal action form that's in your packet. You'll notice in the form tonight, there's 2 leaves of absences that have been requested. There's 2 new hires that we brought in to fill current vacancies. One at South Kingstown High School, one at Broad Rock Middle School. There's a retirement listed, and that is Mr. Ray Wilkinson. He's the current custodian at Peacedale Elementary School, indicating his intention to retire this coming July, bringing to a close 38 years of service to South Kingstown schools. Pretty good. Mr. Wilkinson's body of work has been mainly at Peacedale School. He started out here as an evening custodian at the high school in 1986. Before moving on to Wakefield School, he worked for a while in the maintenance department, and then found his home at Peacedale School. By all accounts, this is a career of loyalty and service to our community. And I wanted to recognize Mr. Wilkinson. We will, of course, recognize him in a more formal way with our other retirees later on in the school year. I had the pleasure this week, along with Ms. Meyer, to attend a meeting at the Johnny Cake Center. Our meeting took place right after the Johnny Cake Center's 50th birthday party on Monday this week. They celebrated 50 years to the day of the opening of the Johnny Cake Center. Ms. Meyer and I brought in the secondary principals, and we met with Executive Director Kate Brewster and Diane Kern from the URI School of Education. We're helping them make their plans for their next application to Governor McKee for the Learn 365 grant for the 2025 school year. Their plan is to continue to target attendance issues, but this time not only at the middle school, but also at the high school, using cooperation between the school and community resources. Also, they would like to establish tutoring services at right now planned to take place at the Johnny Cake Center, and the long-term plan is to open a youth center in the old Johnny Cake building right at Peacedale Circle, and to utilize South Kingstown teachers and retired teachers to offer tutoring services to our community's students. We're going to be having a similar meeting Friday morning when the elementary principals will be joining us as we help them draw up their plans for the elementary component of that Learn 365 proposal. And I've got nothing but great things to say about Ms. Brewster and the Johnny Cake Center and the efforts they put in this year to help our kids. And I will remind you, Governor McKee is coming to Peacedale School Monday afternoon to salute Peacedale School, University of Rhode Island, and the Johnny Cake Center for their effort. In particular, the Reading Pals program, using University of Rhode Island students to come to Peacedale School and help our kids with their literacy skills. We're also working with the Johnny Cake Center and the Tomahawk Museum. We have scheduled two workshops for South Kingstown teachers on the 13th of May on the concept of historical trauma as a way for our teachers to perhaps better understand the unique challenges of our Native American students. We're very much looking forward to that cooperation. And finally, I'm going to give you a piece of terrific news. Over the past few months, there's been lots of banter about the performance of our high school students and whether or not our community should be investing in a new high school. Opponents of the bond have been referring to a rating system called Niche that has our high school ranked, I don't know, 14th or 15th or something in the state. I've heard that a lot in public. Niche, they actually have I will say boldly, the audacity to publish these school ratings that take into consideration anonymous comments like you're commenting on a restaurant and whether the soup was good. But today, I'm sorry, I get bothered by that. I get bothered by that if it's not scientific. The U.S. News and World Report issued their rankings of high schools across America today. Those rankings are based on test scores, advanced placement, participation and success, and graduation success rates. In Rhode Island, of course, Classical High School is always ranked as #1. They're an exam school. They pick among the best and brightest kids in that Providence has to offer. The next 5 schools are Barrington, East Greenwich, Portsmouth, North Kingstown, and the Rebels of South Kingstown High School, with all of the other high schools in the state falling behind us. Our rating using all of those metrics places us in the top 40% of all high schools in America. It qualifies South Kingstown to display an award, a significant one, as an award-winning school in America. That's good news. And I congratulate Dr. McGare and his staff and the students of South Kingstown High School. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you for sharing that great news. It's always good to hear something good, especially while we continue to navigate our way to the pond. That said, you know, we've had a lot of great things happening with our music program, with our sports program, and just, you know, a lot of great things about our high school. So that said,
I can make a motion to accept the superintendent's report.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, Mr. Littlefield. Next item on the agenda is school committee business, and that is a discussion and action on the superintendent search, NESDEC updates. I'd like to call the guys up to the podium. Come on up.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you for having us back. Victor and I have really enjoyed our time here. Victor knows this area, he knows this district. For me, it's been really a pleasure to work with such a professional board and two dedicated people. Again, the liaisons you picked to work with us, phenomenal. So, I mean, Carol and I, Saturdays, we're talking, emailing and texting on Sundays, and Bob, all last week we were in communication. So it's really been a great process. It makes our job so much easier to have a really solid committee working as one to get a job done. So we're basically here for what is really the last steps to the process. So I sent a ton of information out today to Bob. We'll walk through some of that. And at the end of again, feel free to stop me, ask questions, but my job tonight, Victor and I will just kind of get you through the next phase so that this is the board committee that would pick the next superintendent. So right now, you've held to your timeline. You still have plenty of time in your timeline left to do whatever the next steps would be. And that would be how the committee wants to go forward, whether it's with interviews, whether it's with days and visits, and that's something you'll figure out your schedule for that. And then either Bob or Carol can give that to me. I reach out to candidates, set that up just like I did for screening, and give it back so that we handle that. I have been in contact with your finalists. They're aware this is a work in progress, and they have demonstrated patience, and they're good with that. So right now, you also received a link, and that will give you access to the information, the applications for the candidates. So that's a separate piece of paper that looks something like this, and it has a link on the bottom with a password. Should you have any difficulty logging in, just let Bob or Carol know. They'll email me or text me, and we'll get that taken care of at our end. As usual, we stress with our screening committee. We don't suggest you print everything up, but if you do, make sure you destroy the documentations when you're done using them. You also received a list of the references for the candidates. And I also sent a kind of like a simple breakdown on what the procedure looks like. We recommend that the school boards or committees do the interviews based on the references. The reason we do that is we hope that each one of you, we advise you break them up by groups. So you should have a list that have parents on them, teachers on them, colleagues of the finalists, supervisors, school board, school committee members, municipal leaders. The quickest way to do this list is decide amongst the board who would like to be the person that calls all the parents, who would be the person that could call all the staff, who would call administrators. And then the reason we suggest that is when it comes time to deliberate, each one of you have had an opportunity to hear something with regarding the performance of your finalists. And that gives you a little bit of a flavor for each person, what you hear, and then you can share that amongst in the final deliberations. I will send a list. I apologize. It's a basic, quick and simple reference checklist. I'll put it in a Word document, give it to Bob, so that all you have to do is you print it up, keep it nearby. We advise you email the reference first, let them know you will be calling. A cold call might just bounce to a phone. So you give them a little heads up that you're planning on talking to them. They're aware that you will be outreaching them. And then you just kind of, it's real, simple questions. You just keep track. And again, those are your notes to be disposed of at the end, but that'll give you some little way to keep track of who you're talking to and what they're saying. And again, we always suggest that as you're in the middle of interviewing a finalist, we say this, and it's true, the finalist is in the process of interviewing you as a board. They're here to watch your interactions. Many of them, I mean, myself, when I was interviewing, I try to watch some school committee or school board meetings just to see the flavor and the tenure of the group as I'm walking in. So you want to be able to be, your A game, the same level of what I've seen here, the professionalism, the collaboration, and that's how you want to project to any of your finalists also. Questions. We do have a bank of questions. We've given them to the screening committee. I could send them again. The board may want to come up with a whole set of questions on their own. Each candidate should be asked the same questions. And then you can have follow-up questions based on what you see in a resume or the application that might stand out. But you want to set it up so that at least the initial questions would be the same for each candidate. Other than that, really, you've done great work. It's all in the packet. We give you plenty of templates to use. When you are completed your interviews and your search, it would be usually the chair of the board or committee that will reach out to the finalists and basically congratulate them, offer them the job. Then you would go into negotiations. So you can call me up and say, Dave, we've interviewed, would like to enter into negotiations with you. And then you'd bring me in for negotiations. We do offer some support, but I know legal also has contracts available and you would work through legal with regards to that piece of the puzzle. So you're really at the tail end now. The decision for you to make is how do you want to proceed with the process regarding day and district, how you want to conduct your interviews. And then once you sort all that out, get that to me and I'll reach out and finalize with the finalists. Any questions to date on the whole process? I stood here almost 120 days ago telling you we would be here and get you through this, and you have been awesome to work with. I mean that. And it makes our life a little bit easier when we have the professionalism of a board like this.
I just have a clarifying question when it comes to the references. So your suggestion really is that of all the references that we have listed for these two individuals, we should break up.
It's a suggestion where you would like, it's a daunting, unless you have just, one or two want to do all the calls. I'm figuring if you see like there's maybe, I think we asked for anywhere between.
There's a
11 and
number, they have quite a few. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so sometimes you look at, all right, how many parents are on the list and who wants to grab the parents? So then you may only be calling 7 as opposed to 12 or 15. But again, that's something you can decide how you want to do that. That's up to the board.
No, I appreciate the thoroughness that from start to finish or start to today, that you've gone through. And again, the number of references I think is incredible. And, the process itself has been wonderful to get to today. So hopefully we can get it across the finish line. So thank you.
And we're here. I mean, a phone call, a text, an email, we'll respond. If something pops today, tomorrow, and you're like, oh, we forgot this, you just let me know, Victor know, and we'll take it from there. So.
Another qualifying question. If you say like one person grabbed the parents, would that be like they grabbed the parents from both candidates
Both
list?
candidates, right, so that you get that, it gives, instead of looking at, Melissa and Kate and say, here's 25 people, call them all. It breaks up the work a little, but it also continues to keep the whole board invested. So when it comes time to deliberate, we'll know Carol called all the parents, so the question comes out, okay, what did you hear from the parents? What did you hear from the community? What about the administrators that work for this? What's their leadership style? How does that work? And I will send up, it's basically just 5 questions. I'll drop it at the table, but I'll send it in Word doc so that you can have it and just reproduce it 100 times and just keep it near the phone or however you're doing. You've worked hard. You should be proud of the work you've done. Your screening committee did a nice job. You had really some solid applicants apply, so.
Procedurally for tonight, for right now, what we need to decide is kind of the next, the who's calling who doesn't need to be vetted
No.
out right now. So,
No,
but procedurally speaking, we want to have a discussion here and a decision as far as how we want to move forward with the interview process, the day in the,
and if you decide to
district.
stay in district visit, right,
okay,
you'll figure all that out. And then either Bob or Carol can get it to me and I'll pick it up as soon as I get the information, reach out to everybody and we'll set up a schedule.
so do I need to make a motion?
I think that a motion as far as how the committee wants to proceed with the interview process would be warranted. As far as the actual scheduling is concerned, I'll leave that to, the powers that be. But I think it might make sense to have that kind of nailed down.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. Okay, I'll pull it back.
As far as there is a consensus is concerned, like I don't, there's no rule that you need a motion for any of this, to be quite honest with you. I just think that as far as a motion for the interview process, whether or not it's open session and I know that was a topic of conversation in the last meeting and the one that is of concern. That you may want a motion for that, just to set that, a motion and a vote on that. As far as, you can have a motion and a vote as far as whether you want another step in the process, but that's for you're more than welcome to discuss that.
can I just say kind of what we recommended for next steps? Is that we offer the candidates an opportunity for an in-district visit so that they could tour the schools, maybe have a meet and greet, meet the administrators of the buildings, those kind of things. And then to have the interview with the full 7 of us at some point after their in-district visit. And so we had a discussion, what do we want that in open session or in executive session? And I think that's what Michael's saying. Maybe we need a vote on that piece.
So what I would just like to make a motion to conduct our interviews for our next superintendent to be in open session.
I'll second.
Mr. Bradley Share.
Aye.
Mr. James Mistivo.
I was hoping to have some discussion around that, maybe. I don't know. I just wanted to say, I feel like it's important to have that conversation out in the open and like I said, in the last meeting, if they're not willing to stand up there, then maybe they're not the right fit for us. So I'm standing by that position. So aye.
Yes, I'll take the vote back and we can open it up for discussion. Would you like to start us off in a discussion, Mr. Mistivo?
I said what I wanted to say, so.
Now, I just want to say that I think we do have an obligation to the community to be as transparent and forthcoming in this process as possible. So I do think the appropriate course of action is to have it in open session also.
I would echo that as well. I think it's very, very important to get involvement from all stakeholders with the opportunity for all of us to ask questions as you're recommending, but to also ensure that the process allows for the community to ask questions. I think that's vital for our next step in order to ensure confidence in the person that's selected and allow them to get a feel of the community and the types of issues that are important to people here.
And I'll just follow up with that. Seconding all the community input, but I think most importantly for me, having had to look our teachers in the eye on more than one occasion and basically say, we failed you in our previous selections. I want them to see the process, be part of the process and to feel as comfortable and confident as we feel when it's time to make a decision. And that's kind of my driving force of wanting it in open.
I also very strongly believe that the interview should be an open session. I think we owe this to our entire community, our community members, our parents, our teachers. I think we owe it to them to have this interview process take place in open session.
I just second what everybody else is saying here. I do feel very strongly about that as well. I think we're at a very critical stage here in South Kingstown where we need to continue to be what we have been, and that's transparent during this process. So if that is the end of our discussion, I will start the vote process all over again. Okay, so, Mr. Schiff.
Aye.
Mr. Receiver.
Aye.
Ms. Vedder,
Aye.
Ms. Boyd,
Aye.
Ms. Manson,
Hi.
Ms. Busso,
Aye.
and myself, Paula Whitford. Aye, that motion passes.
So
I had a question about the schedule.
Yep.
So in the schedule is set up where this week here would have been the week where we had the finalists visiting our schools. And then next week would have been the week where we conducted the finalist interview. I know we're a little bit behind schedule now, but is it possible for us to get the school visits set up for next week so that we can move into doing the interviews. We will be setting up special sessions for those interviews.
You have plenty of time in this timeline because it was also bumped out to, I believe, May 14th because you have a meeting. Just to restate what I'm hearing, you'll have a day in district interviews to follow. So you'll need 2 days. And you can do this next week if you wanted to, that's up to you. I would really just, on May 1st, you have this time. And I think if you think this through, a day in district, I think we break down even in that packet, what you need to do to plan for that. So it's always important to make sure you talk, look at your calendars, because there's usually a school board or a school committee member or two involved. They're going to meet the candidate, walk them around, show them the district, bring them to the schools. And then you want to have your administrators, you really have to put some thought to it. But if you're ready to roll even the first week in May, you have plenty of time, especially now where you're going to do the day in district and then an interview. So you should be able, without any problem, have this really all wrapped up into negotiations by the May 7th to announce on the 14th. And again, we're here to help you out with that. If you have any questions about, how you want to do that, whether you want a community forum at the end where they could then have a half hour or 45 minutes with the candidate where they can ask their questions, then you come in here and just it's your job to interview. That can all be worked out. But yeah, you have plenty of time here. My question to the board, now that you've made that decision, would it be okay if I contact both finalists and let them know that decision has been made? I'll do that tomorrow. We will. All right. If the consensus is, let them know. I agree. We'll be fine with that. All right. Anything else?
I just want to thank you both. You guys have been fabulous to work with. I mean, the process was a really good, robust process. I think Brad can attest to that as well. So really, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. And from here on in, any questions, anything you need, let us know. And once you pick the days if you're in district, just let me know and I'll go set that up.
I'd like to thank both of you as well, but also the members of the committee, the search committee who came together. We had a group that spent a huge amount of time screening candidates, interviewing people, took their charge extremely seriously. I think did a great job.
They did.
Volunteering to help in the process.
Good group. We will be in touch. Thank you. So,
I just want to ask, jump back on the question about the references real quick. How are we determining who's doing that? It sounds like you got an answer, but I don't think I got that.
So I guess, Carol and Brad, do you want us to kind of contact you guys and divvy it up, or go through Bob and Alexis, or how do we want to?
I can go through them and make a list, like, here's the parents, here's the administrators, here's the teachers. And then give it to Terry, and you can all say, I want parents, I want administrators, and it'll work itself out.
Perfect.
So I'll go through that, make a list, shoot it to Terry.
Great, thank you.
Right, thank
Thank
you.
you for asking, Jean.
And just in preparation, Dr. DeRusso just left these with me. They're reference check questions that may serve as a valuable reference while you are making your phone calls. Yeah, and he'll be sending that out electronically. This is just so that everyone can get a look at it.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the out-of-district enrollment. It is a discussion. Come on up.
Hey, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So at the last school committee meeting, Madam Vice Chair, Ms. Brousseau asked for an overview of the impact to the district of our out-of-district enrollments. So I'm here tonight to help us all get educated on this very important topic. This was a very, very good exercise, so I'm appreciative of the request. It's good to learn. So we have a presentation. Hopefully pull that up. There we go, perfect. So let's look at our agenda here on slide 2. So just going to go through the objective of this presentation. Then we will go through some definitions, and then I'll get into some of the mechanics of how our out-of-district costs are calculated. And then we'll go through various questions that address the impact to the district, and then we'll wrap it up with a nice summary. So looking at slide 3, our primary objective here. So the main question we want to answer is, what is the financial impact of students who enroll out of district? What is the financial impact to our district of students who enroll out of district? And more specifically, how do these students impact our bottom line and our cost per pupil? So what's the impact to the budget and what's the impact to cost per pupil? Those terms will be defined in the next slide if we move to slide 4. So we have a series of definitions here, and it's important to define our terms as we go through this. As I say things throughout this presentation, this is what I mean. So starting with the first one there, out of district is a student residing in South Kingstown, but enrolled in another school district or another school. So specifically speaking, I'm thinking of career and technical education programs or charter schools. Charter schools are also under the broad umbrella of public schools of choice. So out of district, again, is a student residing in South Kingstown, but enrolled in another school district or school. Particularly, I'm speaking of CTE and charter schools. Jumping down to our average daily membership. This is the average number of students in the district on a full-time equivalent basis, and it excludes charter school students, or more broadly, public school of choice students. So average daily membership is the average number of students residing in the district on a full-time equivalent basis, excluding those students enrolled in a public school of choice program. Jumping down below that, we have what's called resident average daily membership. You can find this definition in Rhode Island General Law, Chapter 16-7. This is the average number of resident students in the district, which includes those students enrolled in the public school of choice programs as well. So average daily membership is always a slightly smaller number than resident average daily membership. That's an important detail. Next, we have the local share rate. These are the tuition rates for a student enrolled in a CTE, charter, or state school. So an important distinction to make here is our local share rate is the amount that we will pay another school district to educate a student who resides in South Kingstown. Below that, distinguishable from the local share rate, is the cost per pupil. Cost per pupil is the total district expenditures divided by total enrollment. So the local share rate is a cost to the district. It's a tuition rate that we pay. The cost per pupil is a mathematical function. Very important distinction. And I'll go into more of these details. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Benner.
So when we get our enrollment breakdown, there's a couple other categories, and I just wonder if they're anywhere on this. One is students enrolled in a GED program. Are they considered still in our students at that point? Or are they not in these calculations?
My understanding is they're excluded from the calculation.
Okay, and the homeschooled children are also excluded from these
Correct.
calculations. Okay, I just want to make
That's
clear.
right. That's my understanding.
Yeah,
So
that's my understanding too, from
Yep.
my years of experience with both homeschooling and a child who got their GED. The cost per pupil, total district expenditures divided, no, I'm sorry, local share rate, where it says CTE, charter, or state school. So what is the difference between a state school and the other out of district examples
Sure.
you gave?
Great question. So by state school, primarily what I'm thinking of is the Met School on Quinnipiac Island. There's also the Rhode Island School for the Deaf. There's also the mayoral academies that goes under the public school of choice category. So CTE is specifically another public school district. Career technical education charter schools are the charter schools residing in various districts, and then the state school is a broader category, but primarily I'm thinking of the Met So when we pay tuition to the Met, it's at the, I believe it's at the CTE rate. I won't go into too much on the state side, mostly CTE and charter.
Just-
Great question, yes.
One more, when you say, on cost per pupil divided by total enrollment, is total enrollment the resident average daily
That
membership?
is a great question, and we will go into that.
Okay.
Yes. It's a great question. Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Keep it rolling here. Okay, looking at slide 5, we'll dive into some mechanics here. So I'll try to go slow, try to make this as clear as possible, but if it's not, please jump in and interrupt so I can make this clear. So when looking at fiscal year 2025, we got these data. They were released last week from RIDE, so we know what this is. So the calculation for our local share rates, again, these are the tuition rates that we will pay for fiscal year 2025. There's a primary step and then there's 2 subsidiary steps. First step, looking at that local contribution, that $55.9 million, that is the property tax transfer that we received from the town. That is the numerator. Below that is resident average daily membership. And again, resident average daily membership is all students residing in South Kingstown, including the students enrolled in public school of choice. So you take the local contribution, divided by the resident average daily membership, you get a local share rate of $20,746 for fiscal year 2025. Couple key details here. The resident average daily membership figure is as of June 30, 2023. So as of the end of last fiscal year, that's how RIDE calculates this. So they call it 2 fiscal years hence. So it's fiscal 23 data to calculate the fiscal 25 rate, 2 fiscal years hence.
I know it's the same number for us for 5 years, but the local contribution, what year is that from? For every other district
correct.
but us.
The most, last fiscal year.
So that's the 2024 year, but the students are 2023.
Correct.
So there's a mismatch right there.
Okay, you know what? Let me make sure. Let me find out instead of speculate. Let me find out. So I'll get back to you. That's a great question. For our case, as you said, it's been the same, so it's immaterial, but it's a legitimate question. I should have had that. So good question. All right, so that is the primary step. So our local share rate prior to any adjustments is $20,746 per student. So now we have 2 adjustments. Jumping down to the first one, we have the charter adjustment. So the charter adjustment is we will decrease the local share rate by $1,452 for an adjusted charter rate of $19,294. The adjustment is, that's item D there, is 7% of our local rate per pupil. So that $1,452 is 7% of $20,746. We decrease that off of our local share rate, and that is the amount that we will pay for a charter student in fiscal year 2025. The reason we are allowed to decrease our local share rate for charter students is because they are excluded from state aid. So we don't get the revenue and we're not penalized on the expenditure side, so it balances. Flip that now, it's the opposite effect for the CTE adjustment. So the CTE adjustment is an increase to our local share rate of $1,863 for a total adjusted rate of $22,609. And that's what we will pay for a CTE student out of district in fiscal year 2025. The increase is based on, it's a little convoluted, but basically you can compare that. No, I'm sorry, the CTE adjustment is actually less convoluted than the charter one. The CTE one is simply taking the formula aid per pupil. So the state formula aid that we get divided by our average daily membership, because the formula calculation is slightly different. So we get $1,863 per pupil in state aid. So we are allowed to add that to our local share rate. And that's what we will pay for a CTE student next fiscal year because we receive the state aid. So we get it on the revenue side and the expenditure side.
Similar question when Ms. Vedder had, I assume the local contribution and the state aid are coming from the same fiscal year, whichever one that is, whether it's 22, 23 or 23, 24. Is that correct?
Could you clarify your question? You're saying
So
the way
we
they
get,
calculate it, the metrics that they use are from the same fiscal year. Is that what you're saying?
yes,
Across the board. Yes, that's my understanding.
but the question at hand is the residential average daily membership could be from the previous fiscal year, but the dollars could be from the fiscal year prior to that. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm positive about the resident average daily membership. That's, they call it 2 fiscal years hence, right? So
Right.
that is technically 2 fiscal years
Right,
prior to the year when we will pay it.
right. So we're looking at FY 23.
Correct. That's
The
right.
school year that ended in 2023 is
Correct.
the RIDM.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, and it's most likely the same because we don't have fiscal 24 data, audited data yet.
right.
Right,
No,
so they can't calculate it off of that. Yeah, so as I'm thinking this through, it's most likely consistent across the board.
right. So all these numbers, the local contribution, RIDM and the CTE adjustment are all coming from numbers from FY 2023.
Yeah.
And they're calculated for FY 25, sorry.
As far as I know, there's a wrinkle in the formula aid calculation. They'll use an October 1st average daily membership. So
It's a different,
it's only for the formula aid calculation. Yeah. I wish I could show you all of the RIDE documents for how they calculate these numbers. It's just very convoluted, but just thinking of CTE and charter, right? And formula aid off to the side, essentially, yes, it's consistent across the board in those calculations. Yes.
We're just prepping you for town council meetings. It's fine. Because I think this is amazing and I would love, and dare I say this out loud, I would love at some point, someday, to actually go through this with our town council in a public meeting so that we can, because it's not as simple as people make it. They're like, you just take this number divided by this number, and it really doesn't work that way, right? And this
Sure.
shows you, and there are these other footnotes to every number, and everything has a rule and a law associated with it. So I appreciate you putting all this together. And yes, I would love, before we get into the rest, because I just kind of scrolled through and I'm looking forward to the rest of the slides, but this explanation has never taken place before outside of Monday morning quarterbacking of townsfolk trying to explain our per pupil expenditures. So I appreciate this a lot.
Thank you, I appreciate
I
that.
just want
So-
to make sure I understand something about this
Yep.
calculation. So if our local tax transfer stays flat and enrollment declines as it has been, then our local share rate goes up. So as we, even if CTE enrollment remains flat, the amount we're paying for those, so if we have, say, 100 students in CTE programs out of district right now, and we have the same 100 students next year, but declined enrollment, we will pay more for those same 100 students next
Bingo.
year.
Correct, exactly right.
I'm just curious, is this, are these formulas in the legislation passed on things? Or is this RIDE? I mean, does this come out of the legislature or does it come out of RIDE?
My guess is both. I'm confident that average daily membership is codified in Rhode Island general law. The formula aid, formula aid is as well. So the machinations, RIDE takes Rhode Island general law and interprets it and then spits it out. So broader answer is yes. That's my
So-
understanding.
At some point in my 100 years sitting at this table, I attended a workshop on the funding formula. It gave me a headache. And I'm a mathematician. So I do have a question for you.
Sure.
All right, so on this same slide here. You said that looking at the charter adjustment. Okay, the local share rate is decreased by 7% because our charter school kids do not receive the state aid.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I'm getting this right. But I wasn't writing fast enough and it wasn't sticking in my brain. Can you re-explain how they came up with the CTE rate?
Sure. Yep. So that is, they call it the core instruction rate. That's established by RIDE. So for fiscal year 2025, that's $12,335.
Yeah, I've been through,
they
that was
multiply
part of
that-
the presentation
They
I went
multiply
through.
that times the 15.1% state share, which is its own calculation, for a formula aid per pupil amount of $1,863. That's what we add to our local share rate for a CTE student.
Okay, so the core instruction rate times 15.1, which is the state share, that equals what they call formula aid. I remember this
Formula A per pupil, correct?
per pupil.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Exactly. And just to clarify on the charter adjustment downward, so you have two options for your downward adjustment. One of them is 7% of your local rate per pupil, or you can exclude all of the what they call unique costs per pupil. Compare that to the average charter costs for all of those things. So you take the difference of that, and it's the greater of those two numbers.
Naturally, it's.
I had it in the slides. I removed it. It's just too convoluted, but essentially for our purposes, it's always almost always going to be the 7% of our local appropriation rate off the top.
So the CTE adjustment, is that the same statewide or does that vary by some local enrollment or local? Yeah, I'm just wondering, is everybody getting that 1863 adjustment to their CTE?
It's a different number, but they're all getting the adjustment.
They're all getting the adjustment, but
Correct.
I mean, is Providence adjustment going to be greater or less than ours? How does it all?
I would assume
city
it
to
would be
city?
based on their formula aid per pupil.
I know, my question is formula aid per pupil, but is that statewide? Every district has the
Right, so
same-
every district has their own, has their own rate. I
So that's a
believe.
separate calculation as well. My question really is that number also driven by enrollment? It's because there's an exponential hit on declining enrollment.
Correct.
And I'm just trying to figure out which
Yes.
of these
Yeah.
ones, how extensive is that?
Yeah, because it's not
exponentiality?
a static 1863. It's
Right.
it's per district's formula aid per pupil, so it would be a different.
So it's a
calculation.
different number.
Correct.
So that could be, again, so that's why it's my point. Declining enrollment is not just hitting us once. It hits us again, and with every formula, we are vulnerable because of declining enrollment.
Except for the tuition amount that we pay. So just to clarify, we are never penalized in the next fiscal year for an out-of-district enrollment regarding the tuition that we pay out of districts. We're penalized in that our state aid is decreased by those students enrolled in public school of choice. That's the primary, penalty is not the right word, but you know what I mean, effect.
We're not penalized for the kids that are going to out of school choice, but we have declining enrollment because people can't afford to live here, because the birth rates are going down.
Sure.
That declining enrollment is hitting us in all of these formulas.
Just to be specific, in the state aid calculation, yes, not in the amount that we pay in tuition. So basically, there's no penalty, there's no negative effect on the amount of tuition that we pay to another district by students enrolling out of districts. So the problem doesn't compound in that front. The problem, I don't want to say the problem, the effect
It's a
essentially,
consequence.
the consequence essentially is that our state aid is reduced by those students enrolling in public schools of choice. They're removed from the average daily membership calculation, multiplied times the multiplier, times the share rate, those types of things. Does that make sense? That's the primary effect.
So, but I'm just looking at these formulas. You know what? I'm not going to go there. I'm going to call you and set up a time to go over these formulas.
Sure, come on in. Sounds great. I mean, you mentioned Providence, right? So Providence's adjustment was $334. Portsmouth, $1,202. Barrington, $1,025. Smithfield, $940. So it's all over the map, right? Essentially. But
You can feel free to tell me, Michelle, you're way off base here, but what I recall, Ms. Vetter, from that trial that I did in the funding formula is that core instructional amount is the same across the state.
correct. That's right.
Okay, but the state aid is not.
Correct.
So, that percent that Mr. Kilpatrick said, you know, for us, it's 15.1% of our state, of the state share. That varies by district.
Correct.
And, as far as I know, that percent is far higher in Providence
Correct.
than it is here.
The key takeaway from this, right, is the numerator is the tax transfer, right? It's not our expenditures, because if it was our expenditures that included our out-of-district tuitions, then we would be penalized in the next fiscal year, right? But they don't. They just calculate it based on the property tax transfer that we receive from the town. So they control for that. So essentially, out-of-district tuitions are never in the numerator, right, so to speak. The consequence comes through state aid. We get reduced state aid because of our declining enrollment. Hopefully that is clear. But feel free to schedule a meeting with me. It's fair.
A quick thing, just a quick thing to say, and I've heard this question or statement made at our town council meetings too, that formula aid piece is not something that the school committee controls or our town council controls, and it is different for every community, and it is a huge challenge for South Kingstown. So thank you for clarifying that. I think that's one of the pieces of the puzzle that is very complicated to understand, and I know we've asked the why is that the case, and there is no good response or answer, at least at the moment, but I appreciate you clarifying it. And I think the flip side, if I'm understanding these numbers, if we were able to see a stabilization in enrollment and or maintaining students or some portion of students in our district not going to charter or CTE, then we would not see that exponential hit on our budget, if that's correct.
Yes.
Just one other comment about the state aid situation is that when they passed the funding formula, they did not include transportation. And the only explanation I can get out of that, and trust me, I've been asking that question for 12 years. Why was transportation, it's mandated by law. Why was it not included in the funding formula? You know, one of the reps that talked to me about it called it the fair funding formula. I'm sorry, I can't say that word. It's in my opinion, it's that the urban districts have more reps. The number of votes. And there are districts, and some of our community members are not aware of this. There are urban districts here in this state that give their high school kids RIPTA bus passes, a lot cheaper than having a bus. And how many miles a day do our buses drive?
Oh boy, we have our transportation.
All right,
We're gonna find.
2,000
Two-
a day.
2,000 miles
400,000
a day. And I think Miss Massananti said we have what, 400 road miles in this town? So like, think about it. And
Right.
we have to
And we don't have public transportation.
and we don't have.
It's a great segue into our next slide.
Before you move on, I just want to say thank you. It's hard to answer these questions because it's so easy to get in the weeds. So I really do appreciate you. I mean, we don't mean to grill you. We just are trying to understand, and
It's
you're
all
great.
good. It's
I
part of the fun.
appreciate it.
No, I
Thanks.
appreciate it. All right, looking at slide 8 here. Slide 6. Okay, so let's look under the hood here a little bit and ask the question, why do we have so many out-of-district students, essentially? Okay, well, one factor may be South Kingstown's unique geography. And just a disclaimer, this is one variable in a very complex formula. I'm not saying this is the driver for our costs. You know, we're spending essentially 10% of our budget on out-of-district tuitions. This is just something unique to South Kingstown that might speak to the issue. So all that to say, if you look at this chart we have here, comparing ourselves to some other southern and eastern Rhode Island communities, South Kingstown has the largest total land area, including waterways and non-waterways in this grouping. We also have 2 charter schools within districts. None of the other schools in this comparison have charter schools within their district. And then on the right there, all the way, you can see you know, the nearest charter school out of district essentially. So South Kingstown has a unique geography essentially. And what I don't have listed here is the 4 districts that border South Kingstown that offer CTE programs as well. So there's just a lot of options readily available to families in South Kingstown. I think that's just a natural consequence. You know, we're in a competitive environment. So all of this to say, not making any comments on the quality of education that we provide to the students here, but basically this may be a factor that other districts do not have to deal with essentially. I mean, there are no charter schools on Aquidneck Island, right? Portsmouth, Middletown, and Newport do not have to deal with this problem. I shouldn't say problem. It's not a problem. It's the wrong way to characterize it, but essentially it's a budgetary challenge, we'll say. So this is just, you know, trying to zoom out a little bit and recognize that South Kingstown is unique in this way. Questions? Sure.
Just a comment, in my time sitting at this table, we have never had this content presented this way. Again, extremely helpful for part of the discussion and to dive deeper about understanding some of the perspectives and issues. So thank you.
Well, full disclosure, this was developed by our very own Mr. Bob Littlefield. So full credit to Mr. Littlefield. It was a great discussion.
Good thing you said that. Yes, and you know, and you know, one of the things that struck me when I put this together, you know, comparing South Kingstown to Barrington, with the obvious demographic differences aside, you'll look and see that we are the geographic size of 7 Barringtons. So our transportation costs are going to be significantly higher. And we also have 2 admittedly very successful charter schools right here within our town limit. And when if you live in Barrington and you want to seek a charter school option, the closest is in Providence, and with a proficiency rate in math and in ELA that is significantly lower than any school is going to offer in Barrington. And that's just, it's, you know, we have a wonderful community, but we are unique.
Very good. Okay, moving to slide 7. The question of the night. What is our cost per pupil? So short answer is it depends, as we've already alluded to a little bit. So, you know, what is the numerator? What is the denominator? That matters. Are we talking budgeted or actual expenditures? That also matters. Enrollment as of what date? As of the end of the fiscal year, as of October 1st, as of today? Or which enrollment metric are we using? Resident average daily membership or average daily membership? And again, resident average daily membership is typically higher, greater than average daily membership. So I offer 3 legitimate answers here. So starting all the way to the left, we have our local rate, which is essentially our local share rate, which is the property tax transfer divided by resident average daily membership, again, as of June 30th, 2023, for a cost per pupil of $20,746. That is the cost that the South Kingstown residents, the South Kingstown taxpayers, pay for the students who reside in South Kingstown. That is the cost to the South Kingstown residents. Moving to the right now, in the middle here, we have what I'm calling the operating rate, which, full disclosure, this is not an official metric. This is something I simply calculated to add to the discussion. RIDE does not use this. Nobody uses this. This is just me calling it the operating rate. So looking at just our general fund, our general operating budget, actual expenditures as of June 30th, 2023, which was the 61.4 million, divided by resident average daily membership as of June 30, 2023, gives you a cost per pupil of $22,783. And then moving all the way to the right, we have the RIDE UCOA, Uniform Chart of Accounts, expenditure per pupil report. So this is my projection for fiscal 23, because RIDE hasn't released these data yet. This is what I'm expecting to see on that report. So the total budget, so this is all expenditures across all funding types, local, state, and federal, divided by average daily membership, gives you a cost per pupil of $27,406. RIDE uses average daily membership, and I'm not sure which metric they will use yet for that, which is why this discussion is so important. But that's what I'm expecting to see, $27,406 per student. So when the question is posed to the committee or to, to the school department, what is our cost per pupil? The answer is it depends, what would you like to know? I guess is a proper response. What would serve your inquiry best?
And so to me, the big takeaway is if we do, which our community likes to do it with no like malintent intent, doesn't matter, is the RIDE UCOA number, right? Because we're talking about the kids who are in the seats of our school districts. We're paying, it's $27,406 per child who is in our physical buildings right now. And I think that's important because the RADM and the ADM, that's that driver, right? So if we can have a mechanism in place to retain more students so that they won't leave as frequently as they have been doing in the past, that number in theory would come down.
Absolutely.
Right.
Correct.
And so, families have varying reasons as to why they take their kids and send them to school elsewhere. But that beautiful slide that just preceded this one is a great example of a potential why. Knowing that most of our kids leave 6th, 7th, 8th grade, the state of our high school is it's again, an assumption that you can get anecdotally in a conversation with really anybody because we meet each other on the soccer field or the football field, but our kids just happen to go to different schools. So anecdotally, we can come to the conclusion that our high school is lacking, our track is lacking, our fields are lacking. So to me, this is an amazing, it's just an amazing portfolio of what we're navigating day in and day out here. Thank you.
Great feedback. Thank you. And the other thing we can do, obviously, is we can be as fiscally responsible as possible and constrain the expenditure side, right? And I think we're going to see that number. I don't want to make any promises, but federal funding is going to be dwindling. ESSER funds are going away. Consolidated resource funds, Title 1, 2, 3, and 4, those funds will be probably less in the coming years. So, barring any drastic increases elsewhere, we should see that number essentially level off or even potentially come down. No promises, but that's another way to drive down the cost per pupil. So, all right, very good. Moving to slide 8 now. So here's a snapshot of how we compare to other districts in the state. So essentially, I have just compared us to on the metric of local contribution per resident average daily membership. So again, this is the property tax transfer that each district receives from their municipality divided by their resident average daily membership. And if you look at that black line right in the middle there, that's the median value. And if you see the red bar there, that's South Kingstown. That's where we are. So we're in the upper range of this comparison, essentially. What are we? 1, 2, 3, 5th, ranked 5th here. If I were to show the fiscal 22 expenditure per pupil, we'd move up 2 spots. So we're in, the higher range here. Just a point of note here to try to interpret what we're looking at. The districts left of the black line receive significantly less subsidies from the state and federal government. Districts on the right of that black line are heavily subsidized by the state and federal government. South Kingstown has very broad tax base, lots of taxable property. So the logic is essentially we have the funds available here locally to contribute to education. Other municipalities do not have that.
So my this is where confusion starts to build. Because people talk about, oh, this is the average cost for each student, this is the average cost, and it's not, because Providence's average cost is not that low. This is just the local transfer part.
Correct. Correct.
So when you look at what it costs to educate a child in Providence, it's very high, but they don't have a lot of local transfer. So the local transfer is not the average cost of educating that
You know,
child
it's the cost to the district specifically, to the taxpayers of that town.
to the
right. Yep,
taxpayers,
yep.
correct? But they throw out that like it's, oh, when we lose a student, we lose this average cost. I mean, it doesn't equate to that because like you say, like your point, there's different metrics on what you're trying to pick. But I just think, if we're trying to say what does a student cost the taxpayers in a particular district, but it's not the average cost of educating that child.
That's a great distinction. Yep, absolutely. Very nuanced discussion.
Mr. Kilpatrick, you may not know the answer to this question, and that's fine. You can tell me later. I'm looking at the regional districts. There used to be a bonus for regional districts. Exeter, West Greenwich, Worcester, Gloucester, Bristol, Warren, Charahoe. I think those are the only ones. Are they still getting a bonus from the state for being regional?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Okay,
I can certainly find out for you.
absolutely not a problem. It was just a curiosity question.
Good question. Okay, proceeding to slide 9. All right, so what is the impact? We're almost done. What is the impact? So on the revenue side, so the students that are included in the state formula aid calculation are outplaced, our CTE and our state students. So CTE was the primary discussion for tonight. Those CTE students who live in South Kingstown but attend a CTE program out of district are included in the state formula aid calculation. The students who are excluded are the charter students, public school of choice students. So we receive state aid for a CTE student. We do not receive state aid for a charter student. That's the revenue side. On the expenditure side, out of district enrollments increase the operating budget bottom line. They increase the operating budget bottom line. So tuition to other districts is an additional cost to this district. So we're paying other districts to educate SK students, essentially. So this cost increase has to be offset by decreases elsewhere, essentially. So if students stay in South Kingstown or they come back, we pay the teachers here to educate them. It's kind of how the costs shift. However, out of district tuitions are excluded from the numerator in the local share rate calculation, always. So the tuition amount that we pay to another district is never impacted by an out of district enrolled student. It doesn't skew our rates up. So we're not penalized. That's a key takeaway because again, the numerator is just the property tax transfer. So out of district tuitions are never included in the calculation of our tuition rate or out of district tuition for the next fiscal year. Clear as mud. So the true impact really is volume. If you think about it, it's the number of kids enrolling out of district. And again, to Mr. Shear's point, essentially, what would drive our tuition rates up would be an increase in the property tax transfer or a decrease in resident average daily membership. Kids actually permanently leaving the district.
I just want to say though, we are penalized in a way because this is only on a revenue side. But if our expenditures go up, but our revenue is level funded, then we are penalized because we've got to find other ways to make
Sure.
up that money
Sure,
to
sure.
pay that higher tuition.
Perfect segue to the last slide. Okay. So in summary, perfect segue. So I have what I tried to come up with a visual here so we can understand how the mechanics of this work. So on the left, you have your first scenario. I know, you're right. I should have got more creative. So essentially you have, if out of district students increase, right? If the number of students enrolling out of district increases, other costs have to decrease as a result to absorb that increase. And primarily that's teachers. There's a strong correlation between out of district enrollment and teachers and just in district teachers, which is natural. Second scenario, if out of district students go down and they come back to district, now our other costs, specifically teachers, can go up to educate those kids. It's a seesaw. I thought long and hard about a visual. I hope this is I hope this is sufficient. But essentially, you can see the balancing act that we have to do as a result of out of district enrollment. So
I think it's important to point out, it's not one-to-one relationship, though. It's not like one student comes back and we have to employ another teacher.
Nope.
Because we have classroom sizes. If we can fit that student into an existing classroom, we will. It's when we reach a critical mass of students
Critical
coming
mass.
back that we
Bingo.
would have to. Yeah, in a particular grade too, right? So it's, so, you know, it's not one-to-one. I just want to
Yeah.
make that clear.
no, that's a great point. Exactly.
I think that's a really important point because I think what we often hear is you see that $27,000 number per student here and a $20,000 number for students going out. And there seems to be a belief that it's cheaper to send kids out than to keep them here. When the reality is if two kids go to a CTE program, that's $40,000 we paid out and we still have exactly the same costs here. So it's really just an additional
It's
cost.
an additional cost.
And
Correct.
there's typically, unless you have massive numbers and you close a couple schools, which you can't do that often, then it is only additional cost. There is no saving.
Correct. Great point. Exactly. Okay, that concludes my presentation unless there are other questions.
I don't have a question. I
Thank you,
just have
Mr. Kilpatrick. I just want to point out, if anyone's watching at home and they have the sound turned down, yes, our Peacedale playground equipment has been delivered. That's
Hooray.
great news, but there are no seesaws included in the plan.
Which is
There actually is.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for this presentation. This is phenomenal. Thank you very much.
my pleasure.
And while I may have been kidding earlier, I do believe that this should be something that is presented in front of our town council because it is such an incredibly discussed topic. And usually by people who don't understand the numbers and as you've experienced with us, this level of detail has been eye-opening for us. And we're in it and have been for a long time. So I think it is something that I would like to see us at some point in one of our many budget meetings, but even right now we want to have a symbiotic relationship with the town council, and I think this would be welcome. So.
Just to add that this doesn't include the cost of busing these students to these schools. Is that correct?
By this, what do you mean? What do you mean by
The
this?
cost we're looking at in this presentation, is the cost of, say, busing a student to charter school, because the charter schools get bused. Is that in
The
our
ride-
transportation
That's
budget? Or
the Ride UCOA crossword people that I had on one of those slides, that does. The tuition rate that we pay does not.
Right. So in addition to the tuition we're paying, we are also paying transportation
Correct.
costs,
Correct.
which are not included here in the total cost of.
But
of
it is part of our the UCOA, so it's
Correct.
not calculated for the student who leaves.
Right.
Correct.
The impact is on
No,
the folks who stay.
I'm just saying that when we say there's, I don't remember the number, I have it in front of me now, 19,000 and something for a charter school. What was it? Charter school students, $19,000, let's say. That does not include the bus that we provide
Correct.
that charter school student to get to school.
Correct.
So it's 19,284 plus whatever the cost of their bus is and potentially special education
Correct.
cost too, right?
That's right.
And that, well, I just want to say real quick, I that's where I feel like the UCOA cost is a little misleading because it's not including that resident average daily membership. It's doing the average daily membership, which is students in our schools. To Mr. Shear's point, it's not calculating in the number of students, the ones we're actually sending out of district. So it's sort of that I feel like we're getting double dipped on because we're getting the expense of paying for the students and the transportation for those students, but those students are then not getting calculated in the UCOA rate. So it's sort of hitting us twice in that number.
And we don't get state aid for the charter students.
Right.
Right.
And-
What's the second?
Right. We don't get state aid for the
Right.
charter students.
Right.
But it would be an interesting number to see, to add that tuition plus busing plus special education, all of the expenses that are related to these kids who are going to.
Fair enough.
Be my question because with the use of the UCOA encoding, like, we're trying to be able to actually compare apples to apples, which has been a ongoing struggle. So it's my understanding that some districts don't or differently report their transportation costs as well. So even if you were to compare us with another district, they might not have those transportation data included in that number. Is that correct?
Yes, that sounds correct.
Okay, thank you.
Possible to get that breakdown of the 27 number?
That's my projection. To my knowledge, Riot hasn't published the fiscal 23 data yet. I have the fiscal 22 one for sure. I could share that with you if you'd like.
I mean, the breakdown of what is included in that number, to Brad's point. I don't know how we would demonstrate that, but to his point, the 19 number for the charter school is missing transportation costs, right? And that, so we absorb that on our,
Yeah,
because we're
right, so-
not like sending a check to them. We're just paying the transportation cost.
Yeah, exactly. Correct.
Right.
That's right.
So if,
To our transportation company. Yep.
right, so, and I guess Mr. Mahoney will be doing his presentation next, and we can ask him. No, but if there's a way to break it down, like why the discrepancy, why is it there, right? Besides the numbers of the students, but not to do tomorrow,
Fair enough. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is presentation from our transportation director, Brian Mahoney.
I'm here to speak about transportation, not playgrounds tonight. But I will say that the playground that was mostly taken down at Peacedale today and is getting ready for the new one to be installed will not affect transportation on site. So that's how it's all tied in together. So if anybody drives by there after the meeting, you can see what's going on. That's why I was late tonight, by the way. I'm sorry, I apologize. Peacedale lights were having some issues. They're back up and running. So please take a drive by there. Okay, so I am here tonight to present part of the work I've done and the transportation subcommittee's done, and we put this presentation together. Next slide, please. Just an overview of what I'll be going over. We're going to go over the transportation general information, FY24 current busing, FY25 combined busing routes, FY25 anticipated bus needs, the Ocean State contract overview, and the next steps. Just some general information. Currently, our transportation subcommittee is comprised of 7 members. The transportation subcommittee meets once a month and discusses and reviews all aspects of busing from daily use to future buses and technologies. Currently, there's a statewide bus driver and monitor shortage. All bus drivers must hold a valid CDL Class B license. And our current bus vendor is Ocean State Transit. And I apologize ahead of time. This is a very wordy one. I don't have fun pictures for you guys tonight, but if you want to stop, please stop me at any slide. If anyone has any questions. So discuss our current vendor, Ocean State Transit. The Ocean State Transit drivers and monitors have 17 hours a year in training, 3 from the state and 14 from Ocean State Transit. They do monthly documented safety meetings. They must follow federal, state, ADA, and local laws and policies. Their bus yard is located in South Kingstown, in the West Kingston area. and it has backup buses on site and a mechanic on site. All the buses we currently use are propane powered. And the buses drive 300 over 360,000 miles per year from the AM and PM school travel only. That does not include sports, field trips, late buses, special circumstance buses. Those all add additional mileage, which gets us to over 400,000 miles a year in district that our Ocean State buses are traveling. As part of working with Ocean State and my department is we've been keeping an eye on the propane versus gas versus electric markets and incentives. And I've actually reached out to Westerly because 2 years ago they implemented 2 electric buses. So I'm meeting with them next week to discuss how they started their program, just to see kind of how they did their program, how they do their own busing as a school department. We do not. We obviously have a vendor, but again, just to have all the information to present and to have as a transportation department. Next slide, please. For the current year, as the South Kingstown School Department is legally obligated to bus all SK residents to public and private schools. We have a 3-tier busing system. The high school, Broad Rock, and the elementary are all separate tiers of busing. South Kingstown School Department manages the busing for SK public schools from the pre-K to the adult learners at Hazard. And we also bus Prout, Monsignor Clark, and Bradley South. The current vendor is Ocean State Transit, again, based out of the West Kingston area. We do have additional buses that go out for athletics, field trips, events, the late bus, and summer school busing. The minibus usage that we have yearly is based, the minibuses are based on our yearly needs. In 2023, we had 6 minibuses in the district, and this year we had 9 minibuses due to the needs of the district. Our current contract states that we use 29 full-size buses and minibuses, 8 minibuses. That's just a typo there. Our actual daily usage for this current year is full-size buses. We're using 27, minibuses, we're using 9, and we have 1 specialized van service. Does anyone have any questions about the current year? Okay. Next slide, please. So this has been a discussion of the building committee pretty much since we formed in the beginning, is looking at combining routes, which I know the district had done in the past, and we had experimented with doing 2 years ago when I had started on transportation. So we're looking at switching over to a combined route system to a 2-tier system where the high school and Broad Rock Middle School would ride together, and the elementary school would be the 2nd tier. The benefits of combining the routes would be reduction in long daily route times, which can average 45 to 55 minutes each way. Again, if we have a student who's way out in West Kingston, they might be taking 55 minutes, 56 minutes to get to the high school in the morning. And even on the way back, even if they're the first stop on the way back, it's still a pretty long ride. So they're on the bus for over an hour, hour and a half per day. In some cases, unfortunately, we can't do that first on, first off in the afternoon, just due to the geographical location too. So some students are on pretty extended bus rides when you add the AM and PM busing. Another benefit of combining the buses, the students would have more time to sleep and prepare for the school day, with lowering those average bus times per day. This also eliminates buses passing each other and reduces congestion in the tighter parts of town, especially the Matunic area, West Kingston, where the buses are currently passing each other for the Broad Rock and High School routes. So we're sending 2 buses down some very small roads, and it's creating congestion and essentially wasting mileage in those areas. This would also lead to a smoother transition for day-to-day operations and route control. Reduced cost for SK School Department due to less operational time on the roads with switching to a 2-tier rather than the 3-tier system, and possible reduction of large buses depending on student enrollment and bus needs.
Just curious, do you have any numbers around that, like as far as how how much time could be reduced for the long daily routes and then any potential cost savings, or is it too early to have those numbers for that?
So the cost savings, I have discussed with Ocean State Transit, with looking at the contract that we're currently under, and if we did go forward with them and the amount of hours per day the buses are on the road, and that could lead to a daily significant savings per bus per day multiplied over the course of the whole year. Because again, the buses aren't going to be out for as long on the roads with the 3-tier system. So that's where we would create a large savings I could foresee. And then your other question was the route times. Holly Fahey, the manager at Ocean State Transit, has presented new routes with the combined routes as if today. Again, we don't have our opt-in, opt-out data yet for the next year, or who, seniors that are leaving and who's staying in district, who's not. But most of the routes she was able to get down to below 40 minutes was what she was aiming for. Again, with hearing from community and hearing from, in our discussions as a committee of, these students getting to school when it's staying on the side of the road in the pitch dark and getting on a 55-minute bus to get into town. So that was one of the goals of looking at the combined routes too, is the safety and getting the kids less time physically on the bus with improving the efficiencies of the bus and trying to save the district money. Go to the next slide, please. So our fiscal year 2025 anticipated bus needs. Again, if we do, this is looking at a 2-tier bus system, high school in Broad Rock and elementary. With the students moving grade levels and changes in programs that we've anticipated, we're looking at a potential reduction of 1 to 2 minibuses and 1 van. Year to year, minibuses are based on the need of the current and incoming students. That's why it's hard for us to project budget season and now, because we might have students incoming or leaving who do require mini services. Or I'll give you a good example. We recently had a student who switched from not needing a bus to needing full mini services. So we do get it year round of changes in the mini services that are needed. Again, we will have the additional services of athletics, field trips, late bus for the high school in Broad Rock, elementary, potential elementary after school bus, and summer school and camps, which the camps, I believe, have been paid for in the past by grants, but I just want to put it in there as Ocean State was providing buses last year. Our anticipated needs would be, again, the 27 large buses, reduction in minibuses, and reduction in the van costs.
And just before we move on, I think this is something we'll have to vote on as a committee as far as whether we want to combine the bus routes or not for the next fiscal year. So hopefully we can get that on a future agenda. I was hoping to be on tonight, but didn't make it. So we can, vote on this probably at a future date, but just want to make that clear.
And just to give you a little more data, working with Holly Fahey, again, either way you vote, we'll be able to enact it before the opt-in, opt-out information goes out to parents, and which will come up later in the slides, but.
I just ask something about the tier 2.
Yep.
The 2-tier. Would start times have to be altered, or can you drop off at one and get to the other in the current time you have between start times with the schools?
Yes, with keeping it at that rate, the way Holly had mapped out the district, it wouldn't affect it. If that was something this committee wanted to pursue, Ocean State, would be able to adjust the times if that topic were to be.
Well, I wasn't thinking so much, well, we've had a discussion about
Yeah.
a desire to move
Yep.
start times back, however much, but I'm talking about now one bus is going to 2 different schools and the time between those 2 schools.
Yes, and
You
they,
have enough time to get to.
Yes.
We wouldn't have to alter
no,
that gap.
Not
between
with-
the start time.
not with the routes that they projected for us. They didn't see any issues with the start times and picking the kids up from the West Kingston zone, getting them to Broad Rock, getting them to high school.
And
efficiently.
does this have any effect positively or negatively if we decided we wanted to move start time back by some, does it make a difference if we have 2 tiers or 3 tiers?
I don't believe so. I think with 2 tiers, you'd have more flexibility there because buses are all running together at that time. It's not separate buses if it was to move closer to the elementaries or however you laid it out. With a 2-tier, I think you'd have more, but I've had that discussion with Holly Fahey at Ocean State, and with that potential of a start time, and they didn't see any issue with those 10, 20, however long. They thought there was enough time in between where the buses currently sit and kind of wait for the next tier to start, that they'd be able to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next slide, please. So looking at the current Ocean State Transit contract, the overview. The current Ocean State Transit contract expires June 30th, 2024. The original RFP 2417 was completed 3/24 of 21. The original RFP was for 3 years, and Ocean State Transit had provided a 2-year option for extension. This extension is exercised at the sole discretion of the South Kingstown School Committee. And there is in that contract the ability to reduce bus totals if needed for SK. I'll get into a little bit of that later, about how the pricing model works and everything like that. But there is language in there that protects us if we did ever want to say we'd like to only see 24 buses on the road. And, from what I've seen, the benefits of an extension with Ocean State Transit, is that if we went out to bid at this time for a new contract, that we'd run into potential higher prices in the open market bidding. Benefits, labor rates, insurance, inflation, and propane costs have increased since the 2021 original contract date. Their current bus yard is located in West Kingston. They have a history of quality response from the management and the staff. They've been adept in my 2 years working with them, at handling emergency situations when they arise on the buses. They've had many years of service in the district. They have our data and administrative processes that we currently have with Ocean State. We also, with being with them as our vendor, and if we were to bring them on for 2 more years, we have the budget control and flexibility on the terms with the current contract.
To ask about that, and I'm really glad to hear that. Coming from your committee report, I know the subcommittee for policy has been wanting to talk about bus discipline in that particular policy, where most, like many of our other policies, some of them have existed for a long time. At the very end of it's 8325, that policy, it talks about discipline process on the bus, which I assume is an administrative teamwork issue of how do we make the buses safe and respect the needs of the driver and the monitor, but also ensure that it's an equitable policy and approach. So I know our committee is talking about this likely on the next agenda for our subcommittee, and I'd love to be able to share that with your committee to be able to, if that's possible, I guess that's my question, is it possible to have that discussion in terms of this potential extension on the contract?
To have discussion on, with Ocean State Transit, are you saying?
Right, if we continue with them, just to make sure that any tweaks of a policy might be reflected in their new 3-year or extended contract, whatever we vote on.
Yes, I think, again, just my advice would be, if you'd like me to attend that meeting, and Holly Fahey's been great with attending meetings, and she's the current GM of the local West Kingston branch of Ocean State Transit. I think she'd be able to relay to you, because they do have, and it may very similar to how my department functions. There's an administrative team, but they also have union drivers and monitors. So I think any discussions of what their policies would be on the bus, I think she'd be able to speak to that. And I will say, just personally working with them for the last 2 years, when we've made suggestions or asked them to change any day-to-day routine or policies or to monitor certain situations, they've been more than gracious with doing that.
That's good to hear. I've had very positive experiences requesting special needs or accommodations related to the buses. And I'm grateful to hear that that's still a possibility, and we'll follow up with you.
Anybody else? Any questions on the contract overview?
One, you had brought up earlier fuel source, gas, propane, electric. Do we have the ability to compel to say, hey, you know, we want electric buses now? Is that what you were getting at, that we can say to Ocean State, we want you to make a change, or how would that work?
That was more of a general overview. As a department, just keeping up with the trends, keeping up with modern technology, with the bus fuel sources, with cameras for buses, with safety stops, with the speed cameras, kind of that encompassing everything. We can request new busing that would increase the price. I did speak to them probably about 2 months ago now with looking at the future, and they said again in a sit down meeting that it would increase our price. We couldn't say at this point request a new fleet of buses at the contract rate from 2021. It is possible though if we did want to go to a different model with them, but for the current it wouldn't be on the 2-year extension. But it is something we can request from them, or we could request a negotiation of, we'd like to go 2 years forward, but we would like to see X amount of new buses, and then they could come back to us.
I mean, I would like to think, like, we rely on our finance expert to give us financial advice, and our transportation director, maintenance director, and our educational leaders to guide us. I would like to think that the folks who are in the industry, that they're keeping up to speed with all the various technology and doing that, and knowing how closely you work with them. They've come to many of our transportation subcommittee meetings. They've been very cooperative, and anytime we ask them to explore something, they will, and they give their personal expert advice as to how to manage it. So I would think when it comes to the emerging technology with vehicles, I would like to think we would lean on our experts to give us advice as to what direction to go in.
Yep. And to give you an example of one of the current processes they're doing is we had run into issues with older buses and the camera systems. They were on a hard drive based system. So we were going to review videos at times, and they were either corrupted or had issues. So as they're finding these the cameras, hard drives that are no longer working, they're replacing with solid state hard drives, which when a bus is bouncing all day long on the roads, the solid state makes it so the videos, I'm not gonna say not corruptible, but 99.9% chance less corruptible than a normal hard drive. And that's been at no cost to the district. That was working with them and saying, again, we're working together. You're our vendor, but we're working together, keep the kids safe. We want to see this, and they have been compliant with swapping that technology out at no cost to the district. Any other questions on the budgetary side? Okay, so this is the current layout of the contract that was began in 2021, or should say FY 2022. The total yearly cost at the bottom is based on 29 large buses and 8 mini buses for 180 days AM and PM use. Again, that does not include monitors, additional minibus services, van services, athletics, field trips, late bus, or summer school, or any additional busing uses that we have during the school year. That baseline yearly total cost is just the 180-day transportation based off 29 large buses and 8 minibuses. Currently, we are getting, I put here credited for 2 large buses because we're only using 27, but we are using 9 minibuses, and then all the other additional costs of monitors, athletics, and our current use. So that's where that baseline number is showing the 180-day use, but we do have additional expenses that gets us to our total yearly costs for transportation. And again, this is showing the next 2 years, what it would be for FY 25 and 26, which comes right from the original bid documentation from Ocean State Transit.
Right, and then I think it's important to point out this, these numbers we're seeing down here are not corresponding with what we see in our budget.
Correct.
Because of these additional costs that are out there,
Correct.
for the things that you outlined. So that's where the combining of the bus routes could really help save us, because now we're going less over that minimum amount that we need to pay,
Correct.
right? So,
And at 180 days, we'd be reducing the time on the road, which is reducing how much daily we're paying out to Ocean State Transit. We, again, still would have the other costs associated with monitors, athletics, but a reduction overall to our yearly spending. Any other questions there? Okay. Next slide. It's my last long wordy slide, and it's the last slide, so we got there. The next steps. So what I will produce is a memo from the transportation director to the SK school committee with my recommendation to combine the routes from a 3-tier to a 2-tier structure. Another memo from the transportation director to the SK school committee with my recommendation and at your discretion to renew the contract with Ocean State Transit. Then looking forward a little further, we want to notify parents in writing and on the website if we go forward with the combined routes that it will be starting in September 2024. We are fine tuning the opt-in, opt-out process with Skyward data and Versatrans, which is how our data transfers from Skyward into the bus company's data system. And I'm working with the management team and the IT team at Ocean State Transit on that now. We also want to notify in the coming months all the parents about the procedure of opt-in, opt-out, which will run from May to July. And then in August, we will use that time to fine tune all the routes, and the Ocean State Transit drivers will bid on their routes and take their practice runs so that we're ready for opening day. Any questions, anyone?
thank you for the thorough coverage of the current transportation. I think it's important to understand for all of us exactly what the costs are going to, what the impacts of those costs. And we did talk about transportation earlier in this meeting, alluding to the costs of doing so. So it's important, I think, for the committee and for the community to know that we're looking into it and addressing any efficiencies we can where we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. So the next item on the agenda is a late bus for Peacedale Elementary School pilot program. I will turn that over to you, Mr. Estivas, kind of bring us up to speed
Sure.
on what this is.
Sure, thank you. So Ms. Beaton has brought to our attention at the Transportation Subcommittee a plan to potentially offer a bus for students at Peacedale who may not otherwise be able to attend after-school programs. And we all thought on the subcommittee, this is a great idea. Let's bring this to the full committee to talk about it and get approval for it. I don't want to steal too much of your thunder, so I'll let you go through it in more detail. But I also do apologize. I should have moved you earlier up on the agenda. So thank you for sticking it out until post 9 o'clock on this meeting.
I want to thank so many people for helping me with this. I've been whining about this for a while, and I was whining to Chief Monahan, and he's like, "Oh, come to this to the subcommittee, and I'll get you on the agenda, and then we'll see if we can do something." So I really want to thank him, and also Amy Burgess and John Rapport for helping me work on this as well. The idea is that there's so many wonderful programs that the PTOs offer, and I'm focused on Peacedale because I'm mostly at Peacedale this year. There is interest from the other elementary schools, but we're just focused on the remainder of this year, since it's almost the end of the year, doing a pilot program where we'd have a bus, I'm calling it a later bus, coming to school Wednesday at 4:15 after some of the activities have ended. And the idea is that we have two sort of main classes picked out, a dance class and a sports class. and trying to really recruit kids who might not be able to otherwise participate because they don't have transportation home, or they have someone at home who can't drive them and pick them up, so they really require a bus in order to participate. The PTOs are wonderful about providing scholarships and all sorts of other means, but this is the biggest barrier that I see in terms of kids participating. And we know the more that kids participate in activities, the more engaged they are in school, the more their attendance increases. So all these kinds of things are a real way to encourage these kids. And this also, there's been somewhat of a little bit of a pre-pilot with some of the work that we've been doing with Johnny Cake and the PALS, Reading PALS program and the Appleseed program, where there is a bus to provide those kids a way to get home after the programs. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to participate in many cases. So I guess what I'm asking is for your blessing in terms of going forward with this. The cost, Brian can speak to this more, but it's pretty minimal. It's about $110 or so.
Yeah, so
Your own thing.
each night that the program runs would be $109 and change to take the students from Peacedale to their individual houses. They'd have stops at their houses for the students that are enrolled in this.
And I provided you with a little description of the program, as well as our dismissal protocol. I will be there supervising this to make sure it all goes well and make sure that if there are any other kinds of things that need to happen, that we can update that for future ideas, as well as a parent permission form so that the parents understand what's involved in this as well, and that they're agreeing to be there and receive their child when they come home, and what would happen if they weren't there by any chance. So I don't know if there's anything else that you need to know from this.
Thank you, but I do want to maybe expand on a couple of things. We did have, I think, Mr. Mahoney, you talked to the trust and the powers that be about insurance and how, because it's a PTO program and not a school-based program, how that interplay works. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit so the full committee knows all about it.
Yep, so we did discuss it with the Rhode Island Trust. There's many programs like this in the state. They guided us in how to get from point A to point B to point C to do it correctly. They said some districts just kind of let it go and they start a program and they don't have any paperwork behind it and they just do this. We didn't want to be one of those districts, and our insurance carrier said, don't be that district who does that. So that's where Karen has done an amazing job on all this paperwork side and getting this whole program set up. So they advised us on how to set up a permission form, the insurances that the PTO they already currently carry, but having the documentation behind that. And that once we have this level of it, we would send it to our legal counsel to take a look at. Again, to protect us, because we are adding the liability from essentially currently at these PTO programs, the kids are at the door. A parent or guardian goes up, shows a valid ID to the person running the program or the PTO member. And then the student is dismissed to the parent, again, to keep a secure after hours program in our buildings. So we saw the liability of the fact that a PTO or a person running, a vendor running the program would be transporting student from building to the bus doors. So again, that's where we worked with the trust, and we'll work with our legal team to make sure we have all the documentation in place, so that, again, a scenario that we brought up in front of the committee was student A is having a bad day. He's in the hands of the PTO member running the program. He decides to run into the parking lot rather than boarding the bus. So is, again, to not add liability to the district, we are making sure that this is all, we've taken all the proper steps here.
So I think this is a great pilot program. You're asking for just once a week for 4 weeks. So my question is, if this is a pilot program, what is it a pilot for? So is it to look at rolling it out further on a year-round basis, or do you only operate in the springtime for your programs? I know the other elementary schools offer programs too. I'm very concerned about parity with the other schools. So I have no problem with the pilot to try it for 4 weeks and see how it goes and see, if it works. But I'm just a little bit concerned about what's at a pilot, what's the later request going to be? What are you building towards? I think this is great work and I appreciate your efforts. But if you have some idea of what you're trying to make the future look like.
My fantasy would be able to have them at all the elementary schools and for the PTOs to be able to take this on and figure out how they want to do it in their own individual programs because they're a little bit different in each of the schools and for me to be able to guide them and help them in whatever way they might need to do that. Certainly for sure, West Kingston would have a lot of students I know personally who would need the bus and be able to participate and have not been able to participate in any of the programs. So I'm hoping the other schools will see this and be interested in it. And that we are able to include some money in the budget so that at least one day a week, there's an offering for students to be able to participate. Another thing that has come out of this is I talked to a couple of teachers at school and some of the teachers said, well, I might be able to stay after school one day a week and be able to offer like a book club or some extra math help. Or so there might be some really other nice things that might come out of it if we have an opportunity for students to stay a little bit later at the school. We have that at Broad Rock. We have that at the high school. And again, it feels that it's really not available. It's a barrier for kids who can't participate. And those are probably the kids who could really benefit from these kinds of programs the most. So each year it's looked a little different at Peacedale in terms of how they run their programming. So I think this is something that we would start to talk right now, figure out how this is working. How cumbersome is the paperwork, how easy is it to get the kids to the bus, sort of all the details and see if it works, how it works out, and then be able to sort of make some refinements if we need to. And then start to think about next year and what we wanted to do. And my idea would be maybe a Tuesday bus for Matunic, a Wednesday bus for, Thursday bus for West Kingston. But again, those discussions need to be done in the future, but we got to start somewhere. And I felt like this would be a good year to start. And we also wanted to start when it was light out and all those other kinds of things. So, we just had a little, wanted to get it going and see if we can make it happen for this year.
So Ms. Karen, you and I both know that these programs that we're talking about, these after-school programs, have been going on for quite some time. And we had this conversation many times about how it wasn't all inclusive because there were some students that were not able to participate in some of these programs. And as I recall it, having been that parent of students at Peacedale School particularly, there was not only a spring program, but there were other programs, as we went through the year, offering different types of programs. So, I am happy to see you finally here standing in front of a committee asking for this pilot program. However, I do know that that's not where you want it to stop. I don't know if the other schools have the same programs. That's something I have to do a little bit more research on. I know Wakefield did, but I'm not so sure about Matunic or now West Kingstown. But I can certainly, and I'm happy to support the 4 weeks for now and see how that goes as we gather some more research to see what other programs and, students are able or unable to participate.
It's been one of those people I've been wanting to as well.
And that's what Karen had brought to our subcommittee in presenting this, was that looking at it globally across the district is surveying parents, surveying principals, staff, do we have 5 students at Matunic, 10 students, West Kingston, same thing. So there's been a lot of discussions at the subcommittee level of how to get that engagement.
I just want to ask, when we move this forward, if this pilot program works and we want to extend it to the other 2 elementary schools, all 3 elementary schools, You're talking Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, potentially one for each elementary school. Would that be just for certain periods of time during the year, or would that be considered for a year-round thing? Because this is just for one program that's offered over 4 weeks in May. But are there other similar types of programs that are offered like for 6 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, in those other elementary schools that this would be kind of geared towards, or is it? Yeah, just trying to think of the future costs. Not that it's very much, but just, got to flesh it out. Are we, it would be kind of like year-round offering, or are there certain periods where it'd be?
But I know that P-Still, it doesn't do it the entire school year, so they don't get started until much, sometime in October. I know there's been talk about doing like only 16 weeks next year, or maybe 12 weeks, so it's not the entire, it's not every week. Again, the programs that are offered through the PTO, so it really depends on the volunteers and the PTO and their energy and their ability to sort of organize these kinds of programs. So I think it's going to be a little bit school by school based on what the PTOs offer. But I could see it growing a little bit more in terms of even, as I said, some of the staff being interested in helping some kids after school or doing some more activities that might be really enriching for the students. So I think these are big questions that I don't have the answers for today. Again, just to get it started and to sort of dip our feet in the water, I thought this might be a good way to get it started and just do the 4 weeks and sort of see how it goes and see, for me, it's also, getting that recruitment and making sure people know about it. And so, a lot of families who already know they can't participate, don't even pay attention to the memos and to the emails that go out about the program. So I'm going to do some calling, and I've been doing some calling to sort of get some interest. And I have some students already interested if this is able to go forward, and it starts on Wednesday. So we don't have much time. We've been working on this for a couple of months now, but finally are able to get to this point. So I don't mean to pressure you, but.
So knowing that, knowing you and your fortitude, I know you have a larger plan and would love to see this take off and move forward. And also trusting that you have your thumb on what's going on in those schools and how the programs run. And like you said, 1 year, it might be 12 weeks. 1 year, it doesn't, to me, it's neither here nor there. So I would like to make a motion to approve the later bus for PDES pilot program.
Second.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll report
Thank
back.
you for your work on this, Miss Karen.
I would like to make a motion to table this one pending the memo from the transportation director, because I guess it wasn't included in our pack. So the motion is to table item 6E for a future meeting.
Second. Do we want to discuss it? Is it okay if we table this? Is there?
Yeah, because I didn't see the memo from. So I figured it'd be appropriate to wait for the memo.
Yes, again, from my opinion and working with Ocean State, whether it was agreed upon tonight or at your next meeting, it would not affect our contract status or working with them. And to clarify, I did reach out to them to clarify if it was a 1 year extension plus a 1 year extension, or if it was a 2 year extension. And from their understanding and the verbiage in the contract, it is a 2 year extension for FY 25 and 26.
So
That was,
just,
so I could come back and present on that also.
so a question around that is, so if we did approve this, the negotiation of the contract would go into effect if we approve this recommendation, or should we wait for the contract to come forward before we do this? Does that make sense? That question makes sense?
No, my understanding that agenda set in time was this was a we were going to approve the extension of the existing contract.
It's basically a go, no-go decision. You have the pricing, do you want it or not, essentially? So no terms or conditions will change. It's essentially, do you want to execute at this price going forward?
Do we have the price of year two already? Or do? is
Yes,
there-
it's in that
they're built in
presentation
next-
from the original documentation. There's a set increase per year with the other terms of the contract. Which again,
Like, I'm
if-
okay with tabling it if you want to wait for us to table, but I'm also comfortable with moving. I'm
I-
making a motion and let the committee vote. It's,
Can we get the slide back up that we would at least have it in
Yeah.
a visual that we're voting on? That would be helpful.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be appropriate to table just because we didn't have the memo from Brian about it, yet, but I'm happy to rescind that motion as well if we want to continue the discussion. So I guess I rescind that motion. So- No. Oh, there was a second. I apologize. I thought there was.
I may wish to second, and again, parliamentary procedure where we are at the moment, because I'd personally like to look at the contract first to answer my policy question before I vote on it.
I'm not sure they're negotiating a new contract. I don't know if we can add policy language into the contract if we're just extending it. But if we still have these questions, I'm willing to bring it back for, at a time we have more answers.
Yeah, I guess my question is there anything in the existing contract about bus discipline, and does it match what we currently have? If it does, that's, I just don't, I can't answer the question yet, which is why I would second to table, but.
I think that, well, I mean, the committee has its prerogative and can do whatever the committee would like to do, but I would suggest that it might make sense to review the contract prior to voting on extending it for another 2 years, in which case a tabling might make sense. However, again, action, it's up to the committee.
Mr. Mahoney, did I understand correctly that you said the contract as it has existed for 3 years remains exactly the same except for the money?
Yes,
Is that
yes,
what-
it was, when it was submitted in 2021, the bid was, it was submitted with a 3-year, with a 2-year, extension in the language of the contract.
Okay. And so the only thing that's changed in this extension is the amount of money that they want to charge.
Yes, the totals, that were
Yeah,
presented earlier.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And again, just to reiterate, it would not affect our busing status for next year.
I think if Melissa's really wants to read the wording of the contract and make sure it aligns with policy, I'm willing to give us that time to do that.
So the motion was to table. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. Agenda is the educational survey for equity, inclusion, service update. I'll pass that over to Mr. Littlefield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You will recall that the committee reviewed proposals from a number of different vendors. You approved the vendor West Wind to perform this service for the school district. Mr. Kilpatrick and I met with the Director of Operations and the woman, Anna Clymer, who will be the project manager. We outlined a timetable and our expectations. We have a contract that's in your packet. I would ask just going forward for the committee to give its approval so that Mr. Kilpatrick and I can execute the contract. It's been signed by West Wind. I would sign it and then we would begin the process. We would be looking, because of the odd time of year, we would be looking to begin the foundation in the next couple of weeks. And then Westwind would be on site to launch the audit in the month of August. And then all of the deliverables, the final report, recommendations, et cetera, would come to us in December of 2024. It's the contract is within our budget. This is the services for the audit are funded with our remaining ESSER funds. And I just ask for the committee's approval to execute the contract.
I'll make a motion to move forward with the contract between the South Kingston School District and Westwind Education Policy.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. Last item on the agenda is the school building committee update, and I'll pass that up over to Ms. Massner.
I might pass it off to Mr. Littlefield and Mr. Mahoney because for one component, so between the last meeting we've had and now we've had 2 town hall style forums with our community. Great, in my opinion, great attendance, wide variety of folks who were knowledgeable about what was going on, and also people who were just really getting a good grasp of what was going on. It's been a nice group of people, I think, sounded quite positive. So I attended the first one. It was I will have to say, people were literally sitting on the edge of their seats listening to Chris and Phil present, and they stayed for the complete 2 hours. I was not there on Saturday, so that's why I'll defer to the other 2 folks. Before they get into detail about this past Saturday's forum, we do have a school building committee meeting on Thursday at 4 o'clock. We're moving forward with the process of vetting out the construction manager at risk selection. We have 5 very large, very prominent, very incredible firms who are interested in this project. So we have 5 folks that are getting vetted, and the team that we put together has already started to review their credentials and their applications, and they'll pare it down to 3, and then they'll interview them, and then they'll make a recommendation from there. Thursday's meeting will be basically informational. It will really give a status update on that process. Update about the community participation that we've experienced, and then also we'll be discussing some public communication that's come into the school building committee. But other than that, I will, and we are having a discussion, we will talk about on Thursday, about maybe getting some more public forums before the vote, but incorporating online experience, doing a hybrid situation, probably here using our credentials so that we can have interaction. It is a town hall forum style, so it's not a school building committee business meeting or anything like that. So we'd be able to have that kind of interaction. But I'll pass it off to Brian and Mr. Littlefield because they were here on Saturday and can give more detail.
No, I would say that the statement that we had people at various levels of familiarity with the project was accurate. We had I would say 45 people here on Saturday with lots of different experiences with the schools. It was positive. Phil Conte from Studio Jade was here. He, Mr. Manny, Brian Sylvia, myself, Mr. Mahoney, We facilitated the discussion, lots of excellent questions, really, really good questions. And I think no matter what, everyone left the forum feeling a lot more informed about the project than when they arrived.
I completely agree, and it was interesting at this forum. And to speak to Mr. Littlefield's point, we had a family show up with a baby in a stroller. The baby looked probably 2 months old, and we had some gentlemen here who had been here. Their generations of their family had been here, and they had history about South Kingstown that they brought to light and asked questions ranging from the last 60 years of South Kingstown. And I think it was great too, because again, part of this process is we've wanted everybody here, anybody who wants to come, please ask us questions, and the same thing going forward. Obviously the vote is May 7th, but please reach out to the building committee. If you have any maintenance questions, please reach out to B Mahoney at SKSD-RI.net. But please reach out to the building committee. And again, it was a great turnout. And Mr. Conti did a great job presenting. And again, people who had no idea coming into it what it was, or may have felt one way about it or another way, they were able to come, bring up what they wanted to bring up, and it's been a great experience, I think, for this building project.
I was in attendance myself on Saturday, and I thought it was a very positive forum. I like the idea that you said you're thinking about having more of them, and I think it would be good. As Brian said, I talked to a few people on my way out of here that were really on the fence, but I felt like through our conversation, they were kind of came over to the other side and said, okay, this is what we need to do. And one other thing people are saying too is, if not now, when? So with that, I thank you, Brian, and the rest of the committee for all of your hard work. We've been working very hard. As Michelle has said earlier, it's been, for some of us, our term is coming up. So, I feel like I've never been as busy as I have been in a long, long time. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this bond. I hope it passes in our favor, and then we can move on to what's next.
T-minus
You have a
14
motion?
T-minus 14 days, if you're counting, and I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.